Hello, Charlie TCG here, and welcome back to Looking Ahead, the series where I break down and analyse the meta, what's happening over Japan, and how that impact Taiwan. First off, thank you so much for support on the last Looking Ahead video. It's blown me away by how much you guys are enjoying this series. I'm really invested to see how Japan's meta is shaping up in the Paradox Rift format, one of the most exciting and hard to predict formats we have seen in such a long time. In today's video, I'm going to break down and talk to you, it's Gardevior X on the rise in Japan's meta. Some of the results it kind of got in the City League challenge, as well as also its meta percentage, might be on the rise that Gardevior is doing very well. Not just Iron Hands and Roaring Moon have ruled out the system, Gardevior is still very, very strong. We're just going to break down the rest of the top 16 meta breakdown and what are the top 6 decks in Japan at the moment. And let's also look at the Taiwan Town League, a huge tournament of over 300 people in the Paradox Rift format. We're going to break down the results of that tournament there to see exactly what deck did come out on top. So without further ado, let's break down the top 16 metagame of the City League. And it has changed quite a lot since last week. Roaring Moon dropped all the way down to fifth place after it was the second place for 2 weekends in a row. Gardevior snuck in there, being 13.6%, and we can see some other surprising decks as well. Like Lugia has definitely fallen from grace, but only 3.4%, and Golden Go and Iron Valiant are definitely on the rise as well. So what does this meta really tell us about how it's evolving? Well, definitely Charizard is becoming a very, very big talking point. After last week's Elite Four big tournament over there in Japan, a lot of people are kind of going with the Arvanzard with the Evolution TM and that Toe Scroll to really help you in that Xian Pao matchup. Now, I have done a couple games against that with Xian Pao, and honestly, I still think Xian Pao can be a bit more favored as it does go a little bit slower, but in a best of one format, if you don't need it, that's okay. It's incredibly very strong overall. Tina as well is one of the Japan's best and favorite deck to play in the format right now. So good in the best of one format, really capitalizes on counter capture. One of the only decks we can really utilize Path to Peak, because tons of these decks really do need Path, and it's one of the strongest archetype. Like I mentioned, Gardevoir is on the rise, being 13.6%, which is a massive increase from where it's kind of been beforehand, where it was even falling behind and not really be played as often. It is still very, very powerful. It gains unfortunately, we don't have Moonlight Hill, which is why Gardevoir is so strong, but having the likes of Screamtail really helps you in that single price matchup and decks which don't really respect and have Manaphy on the bench, because you can really capitalize and gain those big one-hit KOs on likes of Archeopters and Baxcaliburs for single price Pokemon, which is very, very strong. Xian Pao and Miraidon are like the Iron Hand style decks, which kind of go around there, but definitely Xian Pao utilize it the best possible. But even some people aren't even playing Iron Hands in Xian Pao. They're kind of focusing more on the turbo build as well, utilizing likes of cancelling clone, cross switches. Still, you can kind of use that combo piece, because maybe Iron Hands is a bit convoluted at times, but I still see a warrant for Iron Hands in there over the regular turbo build. Speaking of a bit of a turbo build, Roaring Moon has a huge split this week. It kind of goes from the generic big powerhouse version one, the turbo one, but also the Lost Zone version. The Lost Zone Roaring Moon is incredibly powerful as well. Having the likes of sorry about this, Radiant Charizard, as well as also the Greninja and Sableye, is really, really good backup attackers, making Roaring Moon a huge threat, potentially could overtake Tina if it's going that sort of way here. And the rest of it decks are kind of a bit more noticeable in some way. Iron Valley is definitely seeing a bit more of an increase, and more specifically the Entei build, which is slowly becoming one of my favorite decks right now in the Paradox Rift format. It's incredibly powerful, the huge 230 HP. Sorry about that. It's incredibly difficult for loads of decks to kind of deal with, and Roaring Moon have to use the Brute Bonnet if they want to have a shot to get a big KO. And Lost Zone is slowly coming on the rise again, being 3.5%. Iron Hand hasn't killed it away just yet, but it's definitely on the rise for it. So if we look at the top 6 decks in the format, there's a little bit of a shaking. Golden Go is back in at the number 5th spot, but if you look there at Lost Tina, it has won 10. Yes, you heard me right. 10 City Leagues, which is incredible. We haven't seen this number in such a long time, and the rest of it down below is Gardevoir in 2nd place, is 5th. But if we just look at Gardevoir's winning to top 8 breakdown, we can see here it is very consistently top cutting these events. It's got 8 second places. I know at least 2 of them, they're also the finalists and also the winner. But you think about it, that's a ton of finals, and Gardevoir is kind of getting into it. It is very, very strong. Didn't lose to too many Xian Pao with Iron Hands in it, but definitely very, very strong. Roaring Moon is definitely going up there with at least 2 of those wins going for that Lost Box archetype. A lot of people are definitely going into that sort of route. They're testing out some sort of thing. Roaring Moon may not be as popular anymore, purely on the basis that people are doing it. They're trying and testing sort of matchup. They're kind of experimenting more with the Lost Zone package. May not perform as well as some people might have thought of, but being just under 10% is still very, very strong for a new archetype. A lot of people have so much faith into this one. Charizard has definitely fallen from grace from last couple before Paradox Rift came on. If you've been following the channel, you would know I was just talking about how much Charizard was dominating the metagame. So it's definitely fallen from grace a little bit, but If we see as top 4 and top 8, it's very, very heavy, so it is doing very, very well. Someone like Golden Go. Golden Go is a deck which is, a lot of people have so much hope and praise for it, but it's actually doing pretty well. But getting 3 wins and 2 second places is very, very strong. A lot of people are kind of opting to go with either the Sizzle package or the Excalibur or the Basket Legion sort of build there. Having a good single price attacking option is definitely something which how I think Golden Go could work. As Path Speak isn't as prevalent as it once was in the early Obsidian Flame sort of metagame, I think Golden Go is actually a not too bad spot. Similar like of Sheehan Pao. Sheehan Pao here is doing very, very well. Not many wins, but you can see the top 4 and top 8 really speak for itself. Sheehan Pao with the Shivery Chill and also having the likes of Earthen Vessel and also Iron Hands just makes the deck incredibly strong. 2 of those wins have definitely used Iron Hands. The other one actually was using the straight turbo build of Sheehan Pao, which is still very, very strong. So let's break down some of these archetypes as well. I'm really excited to see that the metagame is slowly shifting around, but the likes of Lostine and Gardevior staying in the number 1 and number 2 spot. It's giving me a lot of hope that Gardevior can still really survive in the metagame, and I hope this is really good, valuable testing before LAIC, which is just a couple days' time. So we start off by looking at Lostina. This is a list which is very, very similar to what a lot of people are pretty much going to be playing there. Quite a few switching cards as well. The double countercatcher, the 3 destructive capability, the 2 Roxanne and 1 Iono. A lot of people kind of go, is it better to play more Ionos or more Roxanne? My personal opinion is more Roxanne, because Roxanne could be a lot more devastating and more rewarding for you. So say, for example, you're both on, like, your opponent's on 2 prizes, you're on 3 prizes. Yes, you can give Iona them, but you have 3 less cards than a Roxanne would. So I think that having a Roxanne is really, really helpful in that sort of metagame as well. I think the high council Cramorant is better than Sableye. A lot of people are still playing the Jirachi in the matchups which you would need your Stabilize in. So having a double Cramorant, you can pretty much 2-shot most basic EXs and Vs, which is still not too bad. And you can even set up the likes of Greninja and Sableye. Having more counts of Path to Peak is still very, very strong. The energy count is pretty much well within most of the counts. I would potentially have cut a grass for another Jet Energy just to have that more flexibility of that switching, and Counter Catcher just pure on the basis, you're always going to attack with a basic Pokemon. They're probably going to get KO first of all if you don't get the KO back. So it's very, very strong. Just like punish your opponent, giving an Iono, giving a Roxanne, doing a Chorus Experiment and a Gusting Effect is just super, super strong. And this is the Gardevoir list, which is very, very popular in most of the version for Pokemon right now. A lot of people are opting to play Avery. Avery, I'm seeing, is a very, very strong archetype because so many decks need that big full bench space with utilizing all of their support Pokemon. Think of likes of Sheehan Pao, likes of Gardevoir, likes of even like Golden Go and blanking on and Roaring Moon. So many of these archetypes need all of their bench space put for them. So if you just say discard 2 of them and you get to draw 3 cards, that's very, very devastating for your opponent. I like the Mimikyu as well, because Mimikyu is very, very strong just to pop on as a starting Pokemon if you're against the Roaring Moon, if you're against the Iron Hands, if you're against any sort of big turbo archetypes. Just putting a Mimikyu out there could really potentially buy you a turn or 2. So I like that in Gardevoir. You can go the slower route, and that's why I think this is very, very strong. And obviously Scream Tail is just very, very strong in that capability. I like having the counter catcher because Gardevoir is never going to be taking the first prize card. So it's honestly a very, very strong archetype. And Gardevoir is just super, super strong. So having that Miracle Force Curlier, which just makes it very, very powerful. Just like get your whole bench full out if you haven't got that already. And now I want to talk to you about Roaring Moon. This is a really interesting Roaring Moon Lost Box deck, which actually got the win. And you can look at this and go, Charlie, what on earth is this all focused on? It's similar to likes of Giratina. Roaring Moon has that strong capability to just get an instant one-hit KO on anything on his first attack, which is very, very strong. May not potentially need that in a Lost Box because they could easily take 3 prizes that way, because they could just KO a Comfey and put some damage counters on that Roaring Moon after user after its first attack, Frenzy Gouging. But having the likes of the Iron Valiant is just so strong in this one. Just pinging, doing that extra 2 damage, it's just very, very strong. It helps your Sableye math. So all of a sudden you're doing 140 damage, which is very, very strong here. I love the Raihan, so you can instantly set up your guy a lot quicker than just relying purely on the basis of Mirage Gate. You have Beach Court, so you can use that for a retreating option. So constantly be using that, as many switching out as possible. It just is so strong. It makes so much sense. And it's nice to see that Lost Box is adapting to use these newer ancient and future cards and really utilize them to the best of its capability. I think this is a very strong archetype. I don't know if this could be the most optimal way to play Roaring Moon. Judging from the results, even from our tournament results and in Japan, Roaring Moon Lost Box is definitely on the rise. It's becoming a lot more popular. Not the most popular build to play. I would say it's still more the turbo build, like this build right here. It's definitely definitely a more popular sort of build here, but definitely something which I've kind of like been very intrigued about. I feel like a build like this, a lot of people are now deciding to play Greninja and Engie switch, like actually attacking with Greninja, because no one's really expecting it. But now a lot of people are expecting that sort of thing. I love the cross switches, I love the Pokestop. I love the Engie switch for this one. So you could potentially get a turn 2 Greninja attack, which is quite scary for this deck because it is very easy to get that with the likes of Dark Patch, Professor Sada's Fatality. There are so many ways around it to really utilize a turn 2 or even turn 1 if you're going second, Greninja attack. So this is a really interesting way how Roaring Moon is adapting. Some people are running it with Iron Hands, some people are running it with Greninja, some people are just running the straight pure build of just Roaring Moon, just attacking and getting an attack off as early as possible. So I'm loving to see Roaring Moon is actually evolving a lot more than we thought it was. Everyone thought it's just going to be the pure turbo build. I played a build which was very much texture against path. We're having like an Iono, we're having Bibarel, but now we're seeing the Lost Zone build. We're now seeing the attacking package of Greninja, which just means this archetype isn't refined yet. We're going to potentially see a more refined list after the likes of LAIC if the deck does actually perform well. And I honestly have very high hopes for Roaring Moon. Another archetype, this is the one which I've talked about, is Gholdengo. This is a very interesting one here. It does play the one of the 70 HP one, but still focusing more on the 50 HP one. A lot of people are very divisive for this one. The 50 HP one, yes, it's really good. It's cool for family, but for one. But also against an Iron Valiant, they only need 3 of them to get 3 Prizer, or potentially just 1 hit and a Yoga Loop to gain additional turn, which is definitely something to be thinking about, whereas the other one needs like 2 hits and then a Yoga Loop, or potentially 4 Iron Valiants to get a KO on the 70 HP one. That's something to really consider. But having the Sizzle is very strong. 10 plus 50 for each of the opponent's Pokemon that have ability in play on the active is very strong. As I mentioned, so many of its attacks have abilities, focusing on that one. Roaring Moon may not, but every single Pokemon around it on the setup does have abilities. I think this deck is very, very strong, not relying too much on energy recoverment by only really superior energy retrieval and 1 energy retrieval as well. It does play the Clara though, 1 off Super Rod, but we can see here 4 copies of Worker, 2 copies of Avery. So there is a ton of disruptive capability. They're not worried about path speed because they have 3 Temple of Sinnohs and 4 copies of Worker. That is 7 outs. Even if you play Pad, that is 9 outs of Path to Peak, which honestly is incredibly powerful and honestly very, very, very strong as well. I like the disruptive capability of Avery because, like I mentioned, so many decks do need to have the full bench of their support Pokemon. So getting rid of that is very, very strong for Gholdengo. Honestly, very interesting archetype. I'm very intrigued to see that Gholdengo is finally getting the win it deserves. It didn't really get that in the Raging Surf metagame, but definitely in the Paradox Rift format over in Japan, it is doing incredibly well. And it's a very interesting Shein powerless to in fact win. Playing the Kyogre is very intriguing because it's a secondary attacker option in this deck. It does require 4 energies, similar to the likes of Iron Hands, but it does do 180 to anywhere. Some people aren't opting to play Manaphy as much as possible now. Obviously, you will see that Manaphy against Shein Power because they're very scared about Greninja, and you could easily get a setup as early as possible. But this deck is purely built on the turbo aggressiveness. Just play the one-off Pokegear, which I love. Easy way to get off of Pokestop, to get your Irida, to get your Baxcalibur rare candy sort of situation. I love the Earthen Vessel as well. Only one of them with 1 Lightning Energy can be a bit convoluted, but like I mentioned, you have Irida, you have multiple ways to kind of get it out. So that's definitely something which I would potentially be considering, is going up to 2 of those, or potentially a 9-2 split of water of energies. Love the Bibarel, love the Iron Hands. I think this deck is very strong, very consistent. We're seeing that a lot of people in Japan really like favor that by having 4 of the 8 best players in Japan last weekend did play Shein Power, with 3 of them being the Iron Hands version. People are purely respecting Iron Hands. It's maybe the strongest way to play Shein Power. I'm honestly so excited to see how the deck is going to evolve this weekend at LAIC and a more broader scope, instead of just looking at the online results and the City League ones. And we're going to look at Charizard as well. This version is definitely more the TM Evolution build. This is the more stronger build as well. It does play the 2 copies of Charmeleon, which a lot of people may have opted to maybe go with the 3 of, or potentially the Charmander split may not be the optimal one. Not playing that promo one, which there's 2 energies for 40 damage, which is pretty powerful because that gets that big 1-hit KO on a lot of things, at 220 damage total if your Charizard hits for 180, and then you can use that Charmander to get that 220 matchup, which is very, very strong. I love having the Vitality Band as well as also the Defiance Band. Really good way to kind of like get out as much as possible. The Town Store as well, the Arva in this deck is just very, very consistent. Charizard, I know it may look at this, the fact there's so many things going around it, but it is one of the most consistent archetypes. It is one of the best setup abilities we have in the game right now. Opting to go the Bibarel, make sure that you're not as shut down by Path to Peak as pretty much other decks really are. You do only play 3 outs to gain a Stadium card out of the way, but you do play you play 4 copies of Arven, which is just why the deck works. Arven Zard is pretty much become one of the strongest decks right now. We've seen this such a long time, and it's making me excited to play Charizard. And for a person who doesn't really like Charizard as much, it's quite interesting to see. And obviously the counter catcher, I just love to see as well. This isn't the toe scroll version, which is what was played by Ryoto. It got into the top 4 at the Elite Four tournament. But definitely something to really consider about as well. That could be an option if you're really scared about Xian Pao. That's definitely the build that I would potentially go towards. And finally, I'm going to finish by looking at Ente, one of my favorite decks coming out from Paradox Rift. And honestly, it just works so well. And it is so consistent. I've seen multiple games about it. I've theorized it. I'm kind of like looking at lists myself. And honestly, it's just so strong. 230 HP is so difficult for so many decks to kind of deal with. I know the likes of, like, you think about Miraidon and Roy Moon. These decks hit for 220. Roy Moon does have a way to go around it by playing the Brute Bonnet, and the Earthen Vessel capsule. The Ancient Energy capsule can get to that magic 230, but 230 is so difficult. With Bravery Charm, gets up to 270. That is a massive amount of HP. Sorry, 280. That's a massive amount of HP for anyone to deal with it. And the Iron Valiant, because you're playing multiple switching cards and that Jet Energy, because instead of you're doing that maximum 220 damage yourself, you can reach out to that 280 damage, which is just so strong. It just makes this deck so much more consistent, so much better, and honestly, just very, very overall, very, very powerful. The Meta Charm makes sure that you can get the Yoka Loop sort of turn, where in theory you could use an Ente, leave some Iron Valiant pings, potentially get a KO that way. You're just a little bit short, you know your opponent doesn't play any recovery. Boom, Meta Charm. All of a sudden, you're now getting an extra turn and taking potentially additional 4 prizes, and when you only would have taken 2. Radiant Zard is a very good, powerful single prize attacking option. This deck is just so strong, so consistent, and actually nearly made the bracket. Just get 3 wins, but unfortunately not as many second places as the likes of Xian Pao and Gardevior did. So it's very, very close to actually being there. It was literally the number 7 deck right now of the format, which is very, very strong. And to finish off, let's just look at the Taiwan Town League meta. We can see here there were 325 players, which is honestly very, very powerful. And we can see here the meta percentage is very, very similar to how it was in Japan. Charizard and Tina are definitely up in the top sort of position. Obviously, the percentage-wise a little bit different. Roy Moon is the 3rd most played archetype. Xian Pao was 5th. Then Gardevior as well down there as well. A lot of people were opting to play that. We can see here, Lost Box was only 2.2%, I believe. So that's very, very little to where it kind of has been beforehand. Sorry, I believe that was Lugia. Unfortunately, so no, it was actually 2.2 was Lost Box. Sorry, I'm just looking at the metagame, just double checking just for you guys as well. So you can see here that a lot of people are still playing the similar decks, what we've seen online tournaments and also in the likes of in Japan as well. So I'm really liking to see a lot of people are opting that the top 5 archetypes are in fact Charizard, Tina, and Roy Moon, Xian Pao, and Gardevoir. Mew is still very much a strong pick. I think it's very much underrated in the metagame. It didn't actually win any league challenges, City League, sorry, this weekend in Japan. But honestly, it's still very, very strong. It doesn't gain much, but it can hit absolutely like a truck. If we look here at the breakdown here, we saw that Xian Pao Iron Hands actually won and came 2nd, which is pretty powerful as well. Top 4 was Lustina and then Arven Zard with the TM Evolution. Top 8 was Palkia Iron Valiant, Charizard Pidgeot, Gardevoir, and Zorobox. And then top 16 was a couple Lost Zone Tinas, a couple Xian Paos, a couple Iron Valiantvilles, a couple Charizards, and also some Lugias. So it's a very diverse sort of top 16 metagame, which I think very much accurately represents the metagame, which is what the total was over in the Taiwan metagame. I think once we get the league room results and we actually see the deck list, I'm going to definitely cover them hopefully next week on Monday, but we'll go see it as well when they are actually revealed. So I'm honestly very excited to see. This is the first huge tournament we've seen, over 300 players, and Xian Pao Iron Hands in fact win. And you can see here at the top 4 matchups, it's a very good sort of matchup. It's where they can really like shine, Iron Hands can. It's nice to see Roy Moon actually did break into the top 16, and there was the Lost Box build, so could potentially this build be the strongest way to play Roy Moon. So looking ahead, how will Japan's meta actually impact LAIC, which is happening only on Friday, which is only 4 days away? I potentially do think we will see a high count of Roy Moon, maybe the most played archetype. I think Charizard is going to be very, very strong. I think Lustina may not so much. I think a lot of people enjoy the archetype, but it's much stronger in a best of 1 format, which is what they play over there in Japan. I think Gardevior's success will definitely continue. Obviously in Japan, Dimitri, who was a UK player, he did in fact get 2nd place with Gardevoir in the last huge tournament we did see in the 151 format. Potentially we could see that success continue in LAIC, which is definitely a thing saying about it. Doesn't have Moonlit State Hill, which I'm really hoping we do get in our December or January set. And has Iron Valiant found its partner in Ente? I think Ente is one of the strongest picks for Iron Valiant. It is so strong, so consistent, and honestly potentially could be the best way to play it. Having that huge amount of HP, that huge damage output, which can potentially come out from it. I'm just very, very excited for how Paradox Rift format will evolve. So I'm really hope you enjoy the rest of this video, and I hope you have a good rest of your week as well. I'll go back in a couple of days' time with potentially another deck profile. Might even be the ente Iron Valiant, because I just love that archetype. I want to talk about it more, and honestly, just the results it's kind of seen, it's really, really surprised me. So also, obviously, next week is LAIC and going to be looking ahead episode 40, which honestly, it blows me away how much support you guys and you have for the channel, and you just love it as well. And thank you so much for everyone who entered the giveaway, as well as also everything as well. Apologies for my cat in the background. Hope you guys have a brilliant rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye for now.